Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Xbox 360, a retrospective. A series where I will be looking back at every physical Xbox 360 game released in the UK, all from my own almost complete collection. Today we're journeying back to 2007 and the earlier days of the Xbox 360's lifetime. We're taking to the skies and looking back at the Xbox 360 exclusive Ace Combat 6, Fires of Liberation. Let's jump in. Ace Combat began life way back in 1993 as an arcade cabinet called Air Combat. Built by Namco on their System 21 hardware, it was a deluxe cabinet featuring advanced 3D graphics for the time, showcasing its technological capabilities. After strong success in the arcades in both Japan and North America, Namco decided to port it to PlayStation for the console launch. However, the PS1 wasn't quite up to the task of replicating the accelerated 3D performance of the original arcade. They therefore set about building a new version of Air Combat using the arcade machine's core mechanics. And the game debuted on the PlayStation in Japan in June 1995 as Ace Combat, going on to sell more than 2 million units worldwide. In the UK, the game launched in October 1995 as Air Combat. The arcade sequel, Air Combat 22, was launched in 1995 for the Super System 22 arcade hardware, but it was never ported to home systems. The PlayStation sequel, now called Ace Combat in all territories, arrived on PS1 in 1997, and it was a strong critical and commercial success, with updated graphics, more variety in the missions, the introduction of a wingman system, as well as more than 20 unique aircrafts and missions to fly across multiple difficulties. So good, in fact, was Ace Combat 2, that it was actually remade in 2011 for the Nintendo 3DS as Ace Combat Assault Horizon, to debut alongside the Gen 7 Assault Horizon games. Although it carried the Assault Horizon subtitle, the game was a straight-up remake of Ace Combat 2, and had basically nothing to do with Assault Horizon. Ace Combat 3 Electrosphere followed in 1999, another success particularly in Japan, where the game featured 2 discs, over 50 story missions and anime-style cutscenes. Curiously, these were removed from the international release, as was much of the story and the multiple branching narratives, trimmed down to a single faction campaign for the player to play through. Seriously, there could be a full-length retrospective on why this happened, but I'll leave that to someone else. Ace Combat 04 Shattered Skies, I don't know why they added the 0 in either, launched in 2001 and was the first Ace Combat game on PS2, and also the first game to refer to the alternate universe the game is set in as Strange Real. It also marked the formation of the Project Aces studio, Namco's internal studio that took development control of Ace Combat games moving forwards. This one was another strong commercial and critical success, with a Metacritic of 89 and sales well in excess of 2.5 million units, making it the most successful Ace Combat game at the time. Ace Combat 5 arrived in 2004, known as the Unsung War in Japan and the US, but renamed Squadron Leader in Europe. The game followed closely the formula from Ace Combat 4. While it didn't quite match the heights of the previous game, it still sold over 1.5 million units and delivered a Metacritic of 84 in the process. A couple of spin-offs followed, with Ace Combat 0 The Balkan War launching in 2006 for the PS2, which was actually a prequel to the Ace Combat series, depicting the events of the Balkan War, which is basically Strange Real's fictitious version of World War II, featuring older planes than found in previous Ace Combat entries. We also got Ace Combat X Skies of Deception in 2006, marking the series' portable debut, with this one arriving on the Sony PSP system. Both garnered a 75 Metacritic rating and were pretty well received. That brings us to 2007 and the arrival of Ace Combat 6 Fires of Liberation. The first Ace Combat game to ever appear on Xbox, and the first time an Ace Combat game didn't launch on PlayStation. So let's fly through the key facts. Ace Combat 6 Fires of Liberation, to give the game its full title, was developed by the team at Project Aces, the internal studio set up to oversee development of all Ace Combat titles since Ace Combat 4 in 2001. The game was published by Bandai Namco Games, who have also published every Ace Combat game to date. The game is an aerial combat simulator, which features a blend between realistic aircraft handling and arcade-style dogfighting mechanics. The game released in the UK on the 23rd of November 2007, a month after the title's debut in the US on the 23rd of October of the same year. The game launched as an Xbox 360 exclusive. This caused quite a stir at the time, a series so integral and synonymous with PlayStation suddenly venturing out on an exclusive deal on a competing platform. This wasn't a timed deal either. To this day, Ace Combat 6 has only ever been available on Xbox 360. In 2019, the game was made available digitally for the first time as a pre-order bonus for the upcoming Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown for the Xbox One, whereas the PS4 version had an upscaled port of Ace Combat 5 instead. The game garnered a Metacritic of 80 at launch, with praise being given to both its graphics and gameplay. The game shifted just under 1 million units, which is actually the lowest selling mainline entry in the Ace Combat series, though this remains the only Xbox exclusive entry in the franchise. In terms of backwards compatibility, there's great news here. The game was added to the back compat list for the Xbox One in January 2019, and for the Series X console at launch in November 2020. Furthermore, as the game uses a peer-to-peer multiplayer system, the game is still playable online in both competitive multiplayer and co-op modes. So let's take a look at the actual game, shall we? While I played one of the Ace Combat games very briefly at a friend's house on the PS1 sometime in the late 90s, I'll confess that I've never really bothered with the franchise in the past. So playing through this was all pretty new to me. And while the story is very much a self-contained story, it does fit in with other events and timelines in the Ace Combat universe, though any nods to the previous stories were somewhat lost on me, of course. The game plot follows tensions between two fictional nations in Strange Real, Emeria and Estavakia. Some 16 years prior to the game events, Estavakia was hit by some meteors, which decimated much of the country and their economy. After a civil war, Estavakia was taken over by the Generals, who mobilised a massive military force who opted to invade Emeria and their capital city, Grace Maria. Secondary to all this is a woman called Melissa, who is looking for her daughter Matilda, who is missing, initially presumed dead, having left on a school field trip just as the invasion begins. Having been driven to the very western edges of their territory, the Emerian forces hit back to drive the Estavakian assault back and reclaim their territory. We play as a fighter pilot called Talisman, and the game consists of 15 missions that will test your flying combat skills to the limit. Despite having never played an Ace Combat game before, I immediately felt at home with it. The controls are relatively simple. The left stick controls your pitch and your roll. The bumper buttons control the yaw, as in turning without rolling. And the left and right triggers control accelerating and decelerating. Hitting both triggers simultaneously allows you to pull up basically an air brake and make some super tight turns, which is really handy for avoiding incoming missiles. And hitting both bumpers together essentially resets your plane, so levelling it out to keep you going straight. There's 3 different viewpoints: an exterior view, a cockpit view, and a kind of nose tip view, which you can toggle between at any point. You've got missiles and special weapons mapped to the B button, and your endless ammo machine guns mapped to the A button. You also have squadron instructions mapped to your D-pad, which you can use multiple times in any mission. There's some decent tutorial sections too, which give you a good feel of how to fly and, more importantly, how to fight. For an Ace Combat novice like me, these were really welcome, and had me feeling pretty at home with the gameplay fairly quickly. In terms of the main game and missions, the majority of these levels are massive, epic battlefields. You'll usually have multiple objectives in each mission, and a choice of which ones to do in whichever order you choose, as well as a choice of starting points. Before each mission, you choose your plane and special weapon to equip, as well as the plane and special weapon choice for your wingman. Once in the mission, the dynamic mission system means the battlefield will change and evolve based on what you do, which objectives you set out to achieve, and how successful you are in achieving them. Sometimes additional objectives will arrive, or even boss fights or some of the more advanced enemy squadrons will show up and all hell breaks loose. As a new to Ace Combat player, it is sometimes a little overwhelming to try and keep on top of what you're doing, or where you're going, or deciding which objective to go for. And the game doesn't really hold your hand much. It has this kind of instant expectation of you and doesn't let up. There's like an electronic support measures system which can benefit both the player and the enemy AI, which are marked by flashing blue or red circles on the map. While in or around the blue circles, the friendly radars etc. help boost the rate of fire of your weapons and the accuracy of your missiles, while the red circles provide that advantage to your enemy. These can be removed by attacking the units that provide the benefit, which can make very hot areas full of powerful enemies far more manageable. The chaos that I mentioned earlier ties nicely into the story, in that the invasion of Emeria kind of came out of nowhere and left much of the military scrambling in a state of disarray. My initial hour or two with this game were very much like that, until I settled into the rhythm and got the swing of it. It took quite a while for new planes to unlock later in the story, though when they did, there is enough variety in how they feel and what they specialise in to give players that sense of having your own playstyle, as well as your own way of finishing each mission. While some of the voice acting and cutscenes are less than stellar, and there is an absolute abundance of the phrase
"Dance with an angel, Mom."
"dancing with the angels," coined by the missing little girl's fighter pilot father, I did actually find myself quite enjoying the story. It's not something I expected to be vested in coming into this game, but the game does a really solid job of scene setting and making the missions kind of mean something rather than just endless shooting of generic pixels and polygons. It's not Spec Ops: The Line, it's not The Walking Dead Season 1, but it's definitely a more compelling story than I thought it would be. There are checkpoints throughout the missions, which is a blessing at times, as some of the missions can take some time to get through. While I am very much new to the series, even some of the earlier missions had me dogfighting for 30 plus minutes in a mission. But the checkpoint system meant that when an ace showed up at the end of the mission and shot me down, I got to spawn back at the most recent checkpoint rather than having to start the entire mission again. It's a system that was new to Ace Combat with this iteration, and divided opinion to an extent, but as a new player with little experience, it was a welcome addition, which I am not ashamed to say I took advantage of a fair few times. While I didn't try my hand at it, the game does have an 8-player online multiplayer mode. There's a free-for-all and team deathmatch mode, plus a siege mode where players take turns attacking and defending objectives. There's also a 4-player co-op mode, allowing a team to take on some modified and more challenging variants of some of the campaign missions. I believe there's also a facility to allow you to fill the spots out with AI slots, to allow multiplayer to function without needing a lot of players. Though again, I haven't actually checked this. Achievement-wise, this is a tough one. While there's an achievement for finishing each mission in the campaign itself, there's a multitude of achievements that will require multiple playthroughs on the harder difficulties in order to unlock everything to purchase and all the secrets. Shooting down all the named pilots, finishing the game with an S rank on every mission, finishing the entire game without taking damage, finishing the entire game without shooting a bloody missile, finish the entire game in under 2 hours and 15 minutes. Seriously, this is one of the hardest set of single-player achievements I think I've ever seen. The multiplayer achievements are just a huge grind by the looks of it, involving winning 100 games of each different match type, as well as finishing both co-op missions and a stack of online kills. Seriously, if you're looking for a game with easy achievement points, avoid this like the plague. It's at least a few hundred hours to get this done, and it requires some serious skill and commitment. Aside from achievements, what do we have? A campaign that is genuinely interesting. A game that is actually a lot of fun to play. A multiplayer mode that's still available if that's your thing. What's there not to like, I hear you ask? Well, in all honesty, nothing at all. I had a hell of a lot of fun with Ace Combat 6. It is tough to get used to. It is slightly repetitive after a while, I guess. But honestly, I really enjoyed it. It holds up pretty well today. Some of the cloud and water effects look decent, and the terrain looks okay from above, though the closer to the ground you get, it does start to show its age. It runs smoothly, it's got enough to keep you interested, and the new planes that unlock a little later in the game for you to buy do add a little variety when the game starts to need it. I totally agree with the Metacritic here, it's a solid 8 in my book. Value-wise, it's not especially expensive at the time of recording this in December 2024. Recent eBay sales over the last month have been around £7 to £10 for a boxed and complete copy, including postage. There's plenty listed for that sort of price range too, meaning you can be somewhat pickier about the condition you're aiming for. On Vinted, it's a similar price range, circa £7 to £12 including postage, and there are a fair few listed for sale at the moment. CEX in the UK regularly have it priced under £10 too, so it is a reasonably settled value for the game. A quick scan at older Ace Combat titles on PlayStation show that none of them have become especially rare or valuable. Ace Combat 2 fetching around £30 to £40 for a nice boxed and complete copy is about as rare as they seem to be. I think it's one of those games that will never be super valuable, as it's sold in good quantities in all regions, and I don't see any reason for it to shoot up in value anytime soon. Is it worth it? Well, I had a lot of fun with Ace Combat 6. In fact, I've just bought a copy of Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown based on how much I enjoyed this, so it definitely ticked the right boxes for me. Being able to pick it up for less than 10 quid is certainly appealing, and if you've ever had some of those Top Gun fantasies you've always wanted to live out, or you just want a genuinely fun, high-octane aerial combat game, I would definitely recommend it. It's not available digitally anymore. The game and all its DLC were removed in 2016, presumably because the game has actual licensed aircraft in it. While it briefly returned to digital stores as a pre-order bonus exclusively for the Xbox One version of Ace Combat 7, it's never gone back on sale, so you will need a disc to play it. It is fully backwards compatible on both Xbox One and Series X though, which is always a plus. So there you go, that was Ace Combat 6, a game that pissed off a bunch of PlayStation owners at the time, and seemingly still pisses off a bunch of PlayStation owners today. And, for the record, I get it. I hate exclusives too. But for me, as my first taste of Ace Combat, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you an Ace Combat fan that's never got to play it? Did you buy an Xbox just for this game? How do you think it stacks up versus other games in the series? I want to know. Thanks again for watching. Please do help me out by hitting that like button, or even better by dropping a subscription to the channel. I'm trying hard to reach 1,000 subscribers and the required watch hours to hit the YouTube partner requirements, and it would mean a hell of a lot to me if you could help me achieve that. And if there's any Xbox 360 game you want me to cover next, please let me know down below what game and why I should do it. Until next time, be awesome to each other, and I unconditionally love your hecking faces.